Okay, wonderful. So as you all know, emerging technologies is reshaping not just the commercial organizations, but also the government. Emerging technologies like AI and blockchain and robotic process automation, quantum computing, they're rapidly enhancing citizens to services and improving how government operates. Among the leaders that are at the forefront of adopting these emerging technologies are our three panelists here. We have Mr. Okimek from HHS. We have Sunil Madhugiri from CBP, and we have Patrick Breen from National Science Foundation. So these are three of the leaders in the government now who are at the forefront of adopting emerging tech. They're out there on, they speak at conferences all the time. We're very lucky to have them. And they're here to tell us about how their vision for AI, how they're seeing it applied throughout government, and what we can expect in the future, right? I just want to give a little bit of an introduction to each one, and then I want to go into a very quick presentation just to set the framework for this, and then we'll jump into each panelist and we'll have them talk and answer a couple of questions. Macy here will monitor the chat session, so if anyone has questions, please just enter them in, and that at the end of each speaker, we'll ask those questions with the session. So Mr. Okimek is the first Chief AI Information Officer at HHS, and he was also formerly the Reimagine leader, technology Reimagine leader for all of the Reimagine projects at HHS. So he was involved for the last 3 to 5 years in all of the major modernization activities within HHS. Ogi is a Harvard technologist and a cybersecurity expert. He is known for many things, but among the things that he's known for is ATOing the first 2 blockchain and artificial intelligence platform for HHS. Sunil is the Chief Technology Officer at Customs and Border Protection. Sunil is a visionary. He came from the commercial world, entered government, decided to serve our country. He is leading the vision and implementation of numerous breakthroughs in AI, RPA, and blockchain innovations at CBP. And trust me, the work that they're doing there is amazing. Patrick is a senior procurement executive at the National Science Foundation. He is responsible for the overall management of the foundation's award functions as they relate to the acquisitions of products and services, including emerging technologies and complex cooperative assistive agreements. NSF is going through something pretty amazing too. There is potentially some legislation that will come down that will significantly transform the organization. And we're very lucky to have all three panelists here. Right, so thank you. Right. So let me go through really quickly just why we're all here and why this is so important. Can you see the slide here? Okay, wonderful. Gigi gave me this from Bloomberg. So Bloomberg predicts that the federal government in fiscal year 2021 will invest $3 billion, at least $3 billion in AI alone. I think this is actually understated. I think we're already seeing this trend rise very rapidly. And COVID and what we're seeing with the pandemic is just accelerating this trend. Right now, we're seeing the formation of data lakes that are being built throughout the federal government. And the first thing, as you know, in order to do AI, to use AI and to put it into, and to apply it to business processes, you have to have really good data. So we're at the point right now where we're starting that data journey, building data pipelines and building data lakes. But we can expect a lot more investment in this area. And we're already seeing contract vehicles that are shaped specifically for this area. I want to show you this final slide before we jump into our speakers about the evolution of AI, of cognitive automation. So we have, on the left here, we have the classical AI, which we're all familiar with. I think we're all old enough to know what expert systems are, 20 or 30 years ago. These decision systems, very simple, very elementary systems. And now we're kind of in this modern AI state where we're starting to see AI accessible through a central infrastructure where it's powering certain types of decisions and analysis. From here, you're seeing a lot of data curation and labeling. You're seeing embedded edge intelligence. People are using mobile devices to gain predictions about things through, like autonomous cars and things like that. We're seeing advanced image recognition. We're seeing semantic search and sentiment analysis, which is strangely used now there is actually a stock that uses sentiment a fund that uses sentiment to predict stock prices. It's called Buzz if you want to invest in it. So it went public. It's amazing, what AI has done. If you move towards the right into this blue area, you're going to see the advanced AI. These are the capabilities that really will move things forward. The problem that we're facing with AI now is we can't scale it. If you have an i9 computer and you maximize the CPU, if you run 10,000 data samples through it and you apply neural networks, it will take you at least a day to process all of that. But government has terabytes, petabytes of data. And if you run all of that through, it will take you 10 years to process that. So you have now a confluence of technologies that are making it possible to realize the AI vision. And that includes a variety of technologies. One of it is quantum computing. So AWS has a quantum service now, and IBM as well, and many others. And what the quantum computer allows us to do is to process AI requests at scale, independent of the size of the data sample. So we can run massively parallel computing on data samples, and we can leverage that ability to run things in parallel, reassemble the predictions, and create analysis and prediction powered by AI at a very fast speed. So what that will eventually allow us to do is it will allow the machine to think like a human being, because it does require that much processing power in order to do that. One of the problems that we're going to see is the ability to run AI and protect privacy, and also run AI at a local level. Google started experimenting with a concept called Federated Learning, I think about 3 years ago. The idea behind federated learning is that you decentralize AI. So you allow AI to run on your cell phone at the edge devices, and you use that power at the edge device to run predictions, creating the vectorized data that you then share with a central server so that you anonymize and protect the privacy of people. So imagine if you do this, you can use it for science, healthcare. You can do a lot of things where you need to respect privacy, but you need to also protect, you need to also gain value from getting that data, like the healthcare data. A final technology, and 5G allows us to decentralize and build spontaneous networks using shared computing power from mobile devices and decentralized network to power federated machine learning. Blockchain allows us to do one more thing, which is to, in addition to all the other advanced AI, it allows us to personalize AI, which means that we are going to, as humans and as people, we are going to be able to click a button and generate AI predictions that helps us. So take, for example, something very silly that cannot be done with modern technology today is how do you determine true love? How do you find true love? We have eHarmony, we have Match.com, but none of those can do it. None of those can help you find true love, because true love is so deeply personal, and it relies on your personal experience, your personal emotions, your personal interactions, and that data is just not available continuously. But if blockchain were available and the identity was stored on your cell phone, and you can share data with the blockchain and maintain your anonymity, then you can use that information to really create AI that's personalized to your personalized experience. This is the same thing that happened with genetic, the human genome. You start, first kind of figuring out how to get the human genome, and now we're going to use it to then create medicine that is specifically tied for each unique person, right? So this is just a basic illustration of where I believe AI will end up going, and how other complementary technologies will help us get there. But I want to now turn over to our panelists, who can then help, whether or not you agree or disagree with this, please let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this and your vision. The first panelist I would like to ask question is Mr. Oki Mek. I want to know, what is your vision for AI at HHS, and do you have broad stakeholder buy-in for the vision?
Hey guys, good afternoon. Yeah, that's a good question. We started this journey a while back in terms of AI. HSS has been looking at AI readiness since 2018, 2019, 2020 as well. Really looking into how are we ready for AI, because AI is the future. We started drafting up the AI strategy in 2020, in the fall of 2020, aligning with with the White House AI initiative, as well as the executive order on trustworthy AI, as well as the executive order on keeping the lead on AI, because there are many countries that are looking at AI and trying to and joining that race. I think the country that win that race is going to be pretty in a good position to be the world power in the future. We also look at DoD AI strategy as well. In terms of the enterprise AI strategy for the department, we really want to provide directions and guidance in achieving the department AI ambition, which is to partner with academia, industry, and other federal government as well. HSS is looking to leverage AI to solve previously unsolved problems by continuing to lead advances in health and well-being of all American people. Responding to the use of AI across health and human services ecosystem, and scaling out trustworthy AI adoption across the department. And really the main objective is that AI has to benefit society as well. It has to be explainable. It can't be a black box. And really, the government, I see that, I know we are still a little bit far from AI in terms of the fun stuff we want to do with AI. I see more of AI right now is to really have a good descriptive analysis of all the data that we have in the department. I know people want to do predictive analysis, the fun stuff with AI, but really categorizing, indexing the data, and really understanding what data sets we have. It's going to be very beneficial in our journey to engaging AI, because we sit in a lot of data, and very regulated data. We are a big department. So I think having that descriptive analysis and really focusing on data, not just sharing data, but also getting data ready for AI. I think that's the first step into this AI journey.
Great. So Sunil, the same question for you. What is your vision for AI at CBP?
Hello, hey David. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. So CBP, from our perspective, as you know, CBP, our main mission is keeping the country safe, keeping the country's borders safe, right? That's what we do on a daily basis. Because of that, we collect a lot of data. We're a very data-centric agency, petabytes of data, as you mentioned earlier. So because of that, also has challenges as to how do we figure out as to what data we have, figure out how do we make an analysis out of that data, analyze. So like as Oki earlier said, right, we are used to this data from perspective of doing the dashboarding or figuring out analysts looking at some information. It's not really real-time information too, right? So we're doing two things at CBP, which I think is going to help us. First of all, I think the majority of the work which is happening now is on the data engineering side. We need to get the data that is Oki said, right? If data is not good, you're pretty much not predicting in a good fashion, right? So we have two main mission focuses, right? One is keeping the legal travel in the United States, and also keeping the legal trade in the United States, right? Last year we collected $85 billion in revenue for the federal government from trade, right? So because of that, you can imagine all the interactions we have and all the partners we communicate with. from every three-letter agency to everybody else, from partners, from large providers, large, Amazons of the world, UPS of the world, all across the board, right? So the amount of data we exchange between them makes it very, very challenging. They have different standards, different way of collecting information. So because of that, my main job, what I'm doing initially is figuring out how to clean the data up, having good engineering intake process. So that based on that, we have created what is called a center of innovation within my office, the CTO office. Our main job there is to figure out how do we take the data and make sense out of that. The way we're doing it, we're starting small, because if you try to boil the whole ocean every time, as you know, 30% of the projects within AI machine learning actually don't come to fruition, which is a really shocking actually stats. But that's happening actually in industry, right? So what we are doing is we are taking, for example, we are a very video-centric agency, right? We do full motion video, we capture other things. You can think about the kind of work we do. Because of that, initially what we are saying is we don't have any standards for metadata information of that in tagging and annotating data. So that's the first thing we are doing across within CBP. And now think about the border when you come in. I'm not giving away any information here. Think about non-intrusive inspection, right? You're coming through, you have something which we scan and make sure you're good to go, and you go through that, right? Because of that, we have to collect information based on that, and we need to tag what the particular data is. We don't have any standards right now, and we are hoping to get that done here very soon. And we are seeing a lot of interest. Other problem we're having, David, is the so many groups want to do AI, right? Within CVP itself, we are so large. They all have different things they want to do, but ultimately the goal is always the one, right? So what I'm doing is within CVP, trying to collate all the information into one place and hoping that we can provide a service across the whole agency, and that's where we're working towards. Hopefully we'll succeed for that.
Great, wonderful. So Patrick, you're in a very unique role, and I was wondering, what's NSF's role in furthering the vision of AI throughout the federal government?
So NSF actually has a fairly unique role because of the nature of our mission. So for those who aren't familiar with NSF, our primary mission is to support basic research and development. And David, as you sort of alluded to earlier, there's a couple of pieces of draft legislation out there. One was reintroduced again today that will significantly change the way in which we're able to invest in emerging technologies like AI. So when you look at just what we do in AI, NSF on an annual basis over the last 3 years has invested about $500 million a year, primarily through our financial assistance mechanisms to everything from SBIR, STTR, sort of small businesses doing innovative work, and with academia. Our requested budget this year for 21 was over $750 million to invest in AI. And we do this through the grant mechanism. So a lot of smaller grants to academia or to small nonprofits, but we also support major research infrastructure. So we, for example, have invested in something known as the Frontera supercomputer that's down at UT Austin at the Texas Advanced Computing Center. It's the fastest supercomputer at any university in the country, and the 5th most powerful system in the world. And it specifically was designed to help accelerate AI and machine learning research. We've also heavily invested in something known as Cloud Bank. This provides the ability for the research and education communities to get access to commercial cloud computing services. And this builds on some collaborations we've already had with Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and IBM. The other thing is that we have taken the lead in the National AI Research Institutes, and we've done that with other agencies. So there are other partners in that as well. But that's up to, I believe that program would go up to about $200 million over 5 years in investments specific to different tracks in AI learning. And that is an ongoing announcement that's out there for folks who are interested. If you just go to the nsf.gov site and search for AI, all the information comes up. But we're really, most of what we're investing in will eventually benefit NSF as it would benefit anybody else, but we're primarily focused in just expanding the boundaries. We also do look to use it as an internal mechanism as well, but primarily our focus is outward.
Great. So,
oh, I just wanted to say, these three panelists, you guys are not shy. I know all of you, so feel free to unmute yourselves the whole time. I'm sure everybody on the phone would like to hear a good debate. Sunil?
I'm about to ask a very, very tough question.
I was about to ask Breen if you can send us some money our way also. $50 million there. No, I agree with the panelists here, right? This is what we are seeing. I just want to add what David mentioned earlier, right? We talked about RPA, for example, robotic process automation. Big one for us, big one. We have completely changed the way we do business within CBP because of that, right? I'm a former developer. I have a massive ego myself because I feel we can software develop anything, right? You can write code for any stuff and make it work. But I call the last mile. And the last mile is where the problem is. Some of these automation pieces, especially the AI machine is concerned, there's a gap right there. So I'll give you a quick example. One of my boss, the CIO, had asked me, hey, Sunil, can I put RPA with an AI, it has AI model built in that? Can I, because I get thousands of emails every day, and based on my usage pattern, can you bring up the most important emails in the top of my inbox? and we did that for him. Again, I was a little careful. I don't want to delete his emails, but make sure that his emails come on the top of the list. And the reason we can do these things is because there are algorithm built-in models which we are taking advantage of, right? And more you'll see that. And it's a vast field, as David said, the amount of money being spent in there. But I feel, and you have to be careful too, right? I mean, ethical AI, making sure you're not doing the wrong things across the board, also, right? That's the other thing we are making sure, especially for us, we are a law enforcement agency. We're heavily regulated. We have to talk to Congress. If you're taking the wrong pictures, which is not authorized, big problem. PII information, right? So all those components also very important for us. So we are trying our best. It's a new area. It changes by the month. And there are hundreds of vendors available to do various things who want to talk to us also, right? So that's another challenge we have too. But I feel moving forward, this is it's good to be alive these days talking about AI and machine learning.
Yeah. So this is a question, it's a little bit tough for all three of you. As you know, AI is dependent on data. And China and organizations that are overseas, they have access to unlimited data. And it's not as regulated as what we have here. Do you think we are behind, countries like China or other countries overseas in AI? And is that a problem?
Could I go first?
Yeah,
sure, please.
So yeah, since we have been looking at the White House AI strategy and initiative closely, I think we are ahead. I know US, China, Germany, France has invested a lot of money on AI. I think we are ahead in terms of research. I think we are a mixing bowl. The US we recruit very well. We have the major companies, a lot of good data scientists. And I think in terms of implementation, we are behind because I know China is not struggling with privacy laws like we do here, but I think rightfully so. We are still wrestling with privacy laws and privacy concern. But with China, implementation wise, they are far ahead than us because they are able to get data more readily without really looking at privacy laws as we do here. In terms of will they catch up, I think that's debatable, but I think we're ahead right now.
Can I just add to what Oki's saying? I 100% agree with him. So if you get a chance, 2 months back, the National Security Commission on AI, they came out with the report. I'm not sure if you've seen that or not. If you're not seen it, I would highly recommend, please read that. It's very well detailed. All the experts in the industry are there talking about this. So in there, I feel it's like a mixed baggage there, right? I feel that they are saying we are like ahead, but they're catching up fast. That's where we are. And again, like Oki said, right, a little bit easier to get things done there. There are less regulations in the sense you can move faster. I mean, and I would rather have it our way because we need to have laws in place so that we protect people. But I would highly recommend, please read that, including the skills gap also, right? So what is happening is that now so what we are seeing, I'm doing a CVP, we are seeing all the models that some of the algorithms are available online these days. Everything's available online. You can take a good developer with enough skills and actually make them like a semi-data scientist also, right? We are seeing that because the computational power is so good these days. I'm trying to leverage that because data scientists, the word itself is getting very, I would say, diluted now, right? You don't have to be a PhD to be a data scientist anymore. A 20-year-old kid who's smart enough can actually go and learn the algorithms and become like a semi-data scientist. So there is some skills gap there, but I think we are catching up there also.
Yeah, and just to tack on, so I actually agree with everything that's been said. I think one of our key issues is science and security. And for anyone that deals with NSF, it's one of our big pushes on how we secure what we're doing. And we've all sort of experienced sort of the changes and what that places on us in terms of who we can get to work on some of our initiatives. I think the other key part here is when you look at some of what we're doing, those privacy laws come in pretty handy occasionally, but they do require us to think in very different ways. So I think, David, when you and I talked last, I mentioned something known as America's Data Hub. We just closed the request for information on that. This is a new initiative we're having to support the National Center for Engineering, for Science and Engineering Statistics, NCSES, one of our big, one of the 14 statistical agencies in the federal government. But in order for us to get that working correctly, we have to find new ways to get to industry and academia. Our existing, and most people who know me would never believe I would say this as a contracting guy, I love the FAR. It doesn't really fit what we're doing. And we're talking other regulations, but the FAR, I still am convinced I can get anything I need under the FAR. But a lot of those things we have to put in make it very complicated. And that's why we need to work across the federal enterprise to figure out what is the right way to get these services. If we can't develop them in-house and we need to reach out for support, we can do lots of things through grants and cooperative agreements. We do that. We can do lots of things through contracts. This is where things like other transactions authority or other arrangements authority that some of us have really comes in handy, because it allows you to still protect the interests of the government and make sure that we can take that and share it with across the federal enterprise. But that's another hurdle other countries, well, China in particular doesn't have. They write the laws as they go. So it's a whole lot easier for them to do this. For us, again, the FAR is great, but it's 1,000 pages long. So we really do need to rethink how we're buying these technologies, how we're acquiring services, and support and partnership from private industry and from academia.
Well, one of the things that's very interesting with where we are with AI is powered by data. So we have 3 organizations here that all depend on data, that have missions that could be very closely related, HHS and CBP. So Oki, you're at the border today, and you have to process all of these, I believe, the unaccompanied children, right? Do you see, is information being shared efficiently? And do you see in the future that consortiums of data will be formed between organizations that have a similar mission that happens to overlap and support the entire experience of one individual or a citizen throughout the process?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, health records are very regulated, but we have to approach it in a responsible manner, but also looking at, hey, why aren't you sharing data in some cases? I think I'm looking at differential privacy and that's why I always go back to having a good descriptive analysis of your data. It's almost like, if you run a library and you don't really index or categorize your books, it just doesn't make sense because you can't find anything. But having a good descriptive analysis, and you could use machine learning to really classify data as well, so that you could categorize the data in a manner where, if the data falls under HIPAA or PHI or PII, or this data sets that we need doesn't fall in any of those categories, then there's no other reason for you not to share data. I think that could have a better discussion in terms of negotiating for data, because I think that right now the biggest obstacle in AI is sharing data. There's a joke that's running around, scientists and researchers and doctors rather share toothbrush than data, because you don't want to share data because
That's a new one.
it's we should start really looking at sharing data, but we should do it responsibly by really having a good descriptive analysis and really get away from paper. I think you can't really categorize and index and put data in the right place and see what falls under what laws and regulation without digitizing the data. I think that's the first step. You really have to learn how to crawl before you could walk and then run. So I think that's the biggest obstacle in sharing data right now.
Sure, I think I agree, and same thing. We are DHS, CBP falls under DHS, large agency. So we were, I would say, it's become much better, David, from before. Within CBP itself, we were not sharing a toothbrush for sure, but we are definitely now, because of some of the constraints, some of the issues going on with the southern border, we have become much better in sharing data. And technology is also changing, right? Think about some of these things, what we available in the cloud, where you can take a piece of data and expose it somewhere else, and you can do you're writing once and everybody else is reading across the board, things like that, right? And vice versa. So those did not exist even 4 or 5 years back, right? So things are changing from that perspective. So technologies to share data is becoming a lot easier. Like Oki said, is with respect to some of the procedures we have and processes we have in place. And we're breaking those barriers, especially within DHS. I've worked very closely with my counterpart, CTO Rob Brown, that's USCIS, and we actually we are sharing data as we speak right now, and we're using technologies to do that. But across the board, yes, we work with HHS and things like that also, because of currently with what we just mentioned with the current situation in the southern border. We do that, but again, we need to have agreements in place, and some of those pieces are getting better, it's getting faster too. But I think we're still not there. I think we can do a lot more with the shared data, in my opinion, right? I understand they want to own the data. I completely understand. But technology, you mentioned blockchain, right? And you mentioned there, those kind of technologies lets you do that. You own your own data, and lets you manage your own data, but lets you share it in a more secure way, right? So things are like that happening. I think hopefully as we go by and the technology gets more and more adaptable everywhere, it'll get better.
And we've been piloting the use of blockchain and sharing data as we're implementing smart grants, which is based off the smart contracts sort of stuff. And we've been working closely with Treasury on that. But it allows us to get more data from our recipient community, which and they have that added layer of security on it. But it also reduces a lot of burden and paperwork. That the real problem with data sharing, though, is even if it requires an act of Congress, and oftentimes it does, to allow us to share data across agencies and across enterprises, you still then have to go back and negotiate how you're going to get that data, what that data actually is, and just across the statistical agencies, we've been trying lately to, even with potential legislative action, it's been some very interesting discussions with our partners. We all want to answer the same questions. We all have a piece of the puzzle. But then the lawyers get involved and none of us can talk to each other anymore. And it gets very, very complicated very fast.
Hey, careful, David's a lawyer. Be careful what you say. So we did actually get a question that I'd like to read. It's from Gloria. This may be more towards Patrick, but Sunil and Oki, feel free to jump in. And she's heard GSA is talking about using AI in their market research process. Can you guys talk more about the use of AI in procurement, from market research, source selection, all the way through contract closeout?
I mean, I can do that for an hour. But short answer, yes, GSA is looking into that. And this is something that the Chief Acquisition Officers Council is very supportive of. This is a lot like the work that DHS's PIL is doing in terms of past performance and some of the AI work they're doing there. GSA has put together some stuff. It's in a nascent stage. I think eventually it actually will pay some large dividends. It's a good starting place. There are, much like the use of AI in anything where we get to a decision point where someone has to sign off on something, we're trying to figure out what those breakpoints are. I'm pretty supportive of what GSA is doing. I just need to see a little bit more before I can sign off on I know us jumping ahead full steam with it, just because it is such I tell you I want this labor category or this widget, and how I define it is fundamentally different than how somebody else defines it. And so it's really making sure we're focusing on concepts and characteristics as opposed to phrasing and terminology, because it's going to get us into a lot of problems in the acquisition space.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
This question is for all of you, maybe Sunil, maybe you can start. The DoD came out and said that the industry solution for AI is not ready. My question to all of you, and particularly you, Sunil, is: do you believe that AI is ready for prime time, and do you believe that companies that are approaching you today have the solution to meet your needs?
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, David. And so there is no one size fits all, right? It's not like a database. You buy something and you start, and you're collecting data. That's not the case here, right? So the way I look at it is that AI is a journey, right? So every component within your architecture or whatever work your business plan is, or whatever work you're doing, you can break it up into various components. Each of the components have certain things you work on. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned about data annotation, right? There are hundreds of companies who are coming and talking to us about just data annotation. Just data annotation is amazing, right? Let alone predictive analytics or anything like that, figuring all those things out. Just basic data annotation, hundreds of companies are coming and talking to us. So I think it all depends on which area you want to work on. Like what I said, right? I tell you, data engineering is a big deal. Transferring data from point A to point B, physics is involved, right? So it's not real time anymore. We are a real time business because we keep the country safe by giving our officers and our agent in the field the data and the tools the best way we can, so that they can make decisions right there real time. If I'm making copies from 2 or 3 different places, I'm already late. Physics is involved. I don't care what AI you have, right? If the data is too late and somebody gets in, or something happens, it's not good for all of us, right? So I think the first thing people need to concentrate on, in my opinion, is figuring out how to get good data, right? A good, clean data, which is transformed correctly, which has all the requirements you need, good metadata information on top of that, before we go even to the AI ML route, right? So I strongly believe that's helping us. So I've built an architecture within CVP where we're getting real time data, actually. From the field, we're getting real time data, and we're transforming that in certain ways and putting it out. It's a very simple model, but it works. But to answer your question, I think there is no one short answer for this. That's what I think. It all depends on the use case, what you're doing. But I will not fully agree that it's not ready, but I would say it all depends on the use case. And there are hundreds of companies, believe me, who wants to work with us depending on the use case.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think AI is ready. AI is basically collection of machine learning models. Really, when you think about it, it depends on your definition of how advanced the AI is. But I think is the government ready for AI is a better question, because the two obstacles that I've been doing AI for a while. The two biggest obstacles is data collection and data preparation. If the data is so bad, then it's not ready. Then you might have a Ferrari, but you don't have a good, you're taking the Jiffy Lube, or I'm not saying anything bad about Jiffy Lube, but I'm just saying you're putting like regular gas into it, maybe that's not a good idea. But I think AI is ready. But going back to acquisition and grants, because I see it very similar, I think it's machine learning could really help in those two fields, in really looking at the data and really going into details and identifying gaps and looking at historical data. I think we do a pretty bad job of inputting the data. So then you need to use machine learning to make sense of it, and trying to compare one-to-one, like a product or something one-to-one of some sort, or really trying to find a pin in a haystack trying to get an answer in acquisition, or to find fraud or abuse, or to manage risk. It's not confined to acquisition or grants. In any situation, I think machine learning can really help in that. And David and Macy are still involved in acquisition grants with the grants recipient dossier, and some of the work around acquisition with Health and Human Services. I think, yeah, I could see that being very helpful.
Well, and just to tack on again, because I agree with what's been said, but AI is ready. I think the companies, at least are talking to me, are also ready to help support that. The problem I'm running into is actually our internal customers, because one of two things is happening. Either they think it's magic, and just magic will happen with they just go make it work, and there's no requirement there. And you're like, but what do you want us to work with them for? Or well, I don't want to give up my data. I know what it means. I don't want to give it to somebody else. No one can do it as well as I can. And some of that's just change management. Things are going to have to change, and we are going to have to adapt. And AI is a big part of that, because unless somebody's got a magic bucket of money for staffing that I don't know about, we're not going to get a lot more people, but we're all going to get a lot more work in the federal government, especially if we're looking at some of the administration's current initiatives. So as we're looking at that, we've got to get folks comfortable with how this benefits them, because what we don't want them hearing, and what you heard a lot with bots over the last couple of years, is we're going to take this low value stuff and just give it to a bot, and that's the exact wrong thing to say to the people whose jobs are changing. What they're hearing is, well, it just wasn't all that worthwhile, so now we're going to give it to a robot. That's not what we're telling them, right? We're freeing up time for them to do other work, other needs of meeting our mission. So there's a big change management piece internal to organizations that has to be done in order to connect what we're looking for, what we think we can do with it, and those companies are out there ready to come in and support us.
We have Dr. Sanjay Rai here from Montgomery College. I believe you wanted to ask a question.
Certainly. First, David, thank you very much. And all the panelists, really, really very interesting conversation, very informative. I was able to learn a lot. I'm Sanjay Rai. I'm Senior Vice President for Montgomery College. I wanted to hear a little bit more of a role of AI in education in terms of learning, number one, and number two, in learning support, how blockchains and others are used in transcript generation, real-time information, two-way input, and things like that. And third, workforce or talent pipeline for AI industry. Where do you think this will all go? And how should we be ready?
I could take the workforce one from a government perspective, and we experienced this with cybersecurity as well. There's not many data scientists out there, and they do demand a lot of money. Just having a couple of years of experience, it's going to be difficult for the government to retain talent. We could train them, same thing with cybersecurity, and they leave and make double or triple outside. I think I know GSA and the VA has been looking at workforce development on AI and AI certification. That's going to be a tough one. It's hard to retain talent when it's so competitive market. So that's my perspective on AI talent.
No, I totally agree with Oki, and that's what I think. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Sanjay Rai, is that what we are seeing is like so we are the government, right? And getting talent is not that easy because the market for that kind of stuff is extremely hard, especially in the Northern Virginia or the DMV area here, because of Amazon and all the other companies who are coming in full force. So the talent kind of goes to some of the commercial companies, right? So what we've been doing is trying to go to colleges. I went to a few colleges, this is before COVID time, to tell some of the folks, of course, the mission of serving the country is very important. We try to talk to them about that. But ultimately, you have to come up with some kind of vision for them, which kind of gives them a pathway for them to progress in their career. So I have hired like few folks from straight out of school, and I tell you, I was very impressed with these folks. Some of them were still finishing up their college degrees, and there were some of the community colleges also, and they came on board. And you know what? They are actually building AI models for us. And you know what is based on? It's pretty much online training these days, right? You can think about everybody's becoming an AI expert in their own way, because everything is available online. I can take somebody, and if they show them enough direction, they can do, and they're smart enough, and if they are very curious, they can go and find information and learn absolutely everything online these days. And I'm not saying it's not replacing somebody with a 15-year experience with machine learning, statistics, and all those kind of experiences. But way these things, companies are giving out model these days, right? I'm working with a company. Their main job is to manage those models. That's what they do. Is they take all the machine learning models and try to manage them, not only from any product, because every product these days, when that comes out, say it's AI ML ready, right? That's what they talk about. And they have these algorithms within that. Who's going to manage those, right? The company just managing that itself. So the whole landscape is changing, I think. I think you'll see more and more, to your point, in the education perspective, this will become a norm now moving forward. Computer science is the first one of the steps within that. But things that people are learning, statistics with part of that, probability, and those, which is all components of AI ML, these kids are learning these days, right? And you will see that become a norm as computer science is like learning a C language or C++, Java languages. You see that becoming a norm also as part of that, right? Each will specialize differently, but everything is available online these days. Even a guy like me can go online and start learning stuff at my age also. So I think it's pretty cool.
Prove it.
And just to sort of address sort of academia and education in this, I'm going to push anyone who's interested again to go look at our solicitation for the AI research initiatives. But we have a whole section in there that focuses specifically on education and human resources. It's actually part of our budget. It's also a director we have, and their main focus is working to try to broaden not just participation, but also how education is delivered. And because the AI initiative that they're working on here at NSF is across all of our science directorates, one of the things we're really looking for is that sort of convergence, right? Where do these all come together? Because it might be, insert, biology. I'll pick on biology because I like to pick on our biological sciences folks most of the time. They have, with the NEON project, it's a National Ecological Observatory Network. It's the only continental scale observatory that is anywhere right now. Massive amounts of data you can do just about anything on, but a big part of that is how are you using that for education? What are you doing with that? And so that's the other thing to look at is you can't look at AI, especially if you're looking at academia, and go, well, it's just AI. Maybe that falls under the computer science department, maybe it's over here. You need to look at how that can impact both the students and just the future of education on how you use what that particular discipline is coming up with. So there's a much broader base there, I think, for academia than most people think.
I think I am really so fascinated to listen to all of you. Certainly AI to do what, right? Whether are we addressing climate change problems? I mean, there are problems in the world, a world that AI can really expedite our path to solutions. Certainly a very interdisciplinary field. Computer science, if you want to study data science, sometimes better to learn it through computer science program than a rather typical statistics program, right? In Montgomery County, at Montgomery College, we started a data science program, one of the first, at least community college level in the country to do that. And part of, several, at least couple of big NSF projects too. Great partnership. My colleague Ann Candenium is here too. So USG, universities at Shady Grove, Montgomery College, together we are trying to come up with a talent development, whether it's typical computer science, data science, cybersecurity, cloud computing, in all these areas. And what an asset that we have all of you here. So as we start our journey more in this direction, through David and others, we will certainly engage you in a conversation with us. So how do we work together to produce talent that will be needed? Because China probably has some advantage that they don't have the privacy laws and others. But in terms of talent development, I think that will be another area where we can lead the world.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Ryan, we really want you to be successful in building the talent pipeline, because we desperately need the talent too. And we're gonna let the federal government train them and then go steal them from
we want to have so much talent that enough for everyone, government and industry and education. Frankly, we need talent. We need to use AI too. I think that's where you will find down the line that education is benefiting more than AI than what we see right now other industries. Very, very impressive.
Great. So we're moving in towards the end of time. So I like to go into the what's next part of the agenda. I love to know from you, Patrick, and this is a tough question, but what percentage of the IT budget do you think will eventually be shifted to emerging technologies and AI, and then how will the government balance where it takes it from, to do all the things that we discussed today?
Well, and that is so that's difficult, because part of this comes down to what are we defining IT to be? And this is where I think folks get a little bit confused in terms of federal budget space, because there are some very sure definitions they have, but when you start really working around the edges, there's a lot of overlap between, for example, some of the stuff we're doing in the HR space, actually, in internal government HR space, that there really is probably more IT should be managed by the CIO's office because of the way they're using the technology. And that would be something like, we did a career compass challenge where people came up with this whole sort of app that helped you pick a career path in science and technology. It was really interesting. But I think you're going to see an incremental increase until folks actually figure out what they're doing. And we saw this as well when RPA was the buzzword. Every 5 seconds, people kept talking about standing up bots. They dropped a bunch of money on it, and then they weren't quite sure what they were going to do with those bots, and so you sort of bottom out. So I think folks are being a little bit more judicious with how they're spending their money. I think a big part of that is walking through all of the rules and regulations around what the data is, how you have to handle the data, what the privacy is around the data, who can access the data. But so I would see what I think a continued pattern we're seeing today, where people are going to try to find something that's more targeted, more focused, more local to a specific issue they're having, and then do an iterative funding opportunity on that. Do a small pilot and then start broadening that out until it gets to a full solution set. But honestly, I could see just if we want to be conservative, it's probably a 10% increase over the next several years. Again, it's simply because of how we're going to have to manage our data and what we're going to have to do with it. But the 10% would be a conservative, I think, low end estimate.
Wow. So Sunil, as the race for AI intensifies, do you see a point where CBP would buy AI as a managed service or as a service, rather than controlling AI within CBP's infrastructure per se?
Yeah, so I think, because of the mission, what we are, David, I would say we have to keep the lights on, right? Because the borders cannot close and trade has to go on, other things have to go on. So we have to support that mission, of course, 24/7. But what we are doing, we are slowly kind of investing in the newer technologies, emerging technology, which is more AI related pieces, and also trying to, I would say, taking some of the legacy implementations we have, also see we can somehow modernize that to some kind of a transformation, right? So I would say we are definitely looking at, we don't want to be in the business of managing anything, right? Ultimately, our mission is keeping the country safe. That's the number one mission we have, right? So we don't want to be in the space, but it's not easy. Not easy because of privacy and other components in there. It makes it challenging. But I'm definitely looking at the first thing I look at. Can I get something like a managed service outside, where it's data is safe and the PII stuff is taken care of, and the privacy within CVP, the privacy folks are okay. All those things that we are looking at, right? The recent SolarWinds attack has not helped some of the folks, right? Because unfortunately, for whatever reason, with multiple components within that, some of the cloud partners were attacked because of that. So even though it was not CVP affected directly, or DHS was affected pretty badly, right? So we are concerned from that perspective, but we are definitely looking at, in my book, I look at managed services first if we can, especially the FedRAMP components and some of the FISMA requirements what we have. As long as some of the things are met, we do have an extensive ATO process, which is almost takes a year. So that's why. So if we have something like that done, we look at managed service as an option for sure, David. We like to go there, but we're not there yet.
Okay, wonderful. And so Oki, AI is evolving very rapidly. And we see Tesla investing in a variety of auto companies investing in autonomous driving cars. What's next in AI, do you think? What's the next practical application of AI that we can expect to see?
Oh, that's a very broad. That's a tough question. But I know, since I think AI is the future. I think AI is beyond just health and human services. It's really at the national level. It has implication on the geopolitical. It has economic advantages. It has national security. As you look at SolarWinds and all the attacks and breaches that's happening, I think AI is the future. We have a lot of data. We created more data the past 2 years than our entire existence of mankind. There's going to be a need to not just having a predictive analysis, but also have a good descriptive analysis of what went right, what went wrong. Why are we doing this? Can we do better? I think the future of AI is really allowing AI to look at different perspectives, looking at different data sets and coming up with a good recommendation for decision maker. A human has to make that decision. I think we're still far away from having a machine making a final decision. I think that's scary. People are scared of black box, not non-explainable AI. That's why I think blockchain will be almost mandatory for AI, I think, because right now we're looking at playbook, creating a playbook for the Department of Health and Human Services, how we engage AI. We're looking at accountability, transparency, explainability, safe, secure, trustworthy. Those, just bring up blockchain to me. That's describing blockchain to me. So I think blockchain and AI is going to go hand in hand in the future.
So Patrick and Sunil, we hear a lot about code bias and bias in AI. Do you have any final words about where you think the future is, and should we be cautious or should we be aggressive in the adoption of AI?
I think there's a balance, in my opinion, David, is that I think, we talked about ethical AI, making sure that you're doing it for the right reason, right? I mean, you can really, I think that article I mentioned about the National Security Commission on AI, if you get a chance, people should read that. It kind of goes into some of these things I just mentioned. But I personally feel some of the things we are doing, just for the mission itself, some of the data, way we are analyzing data, figuring out some of the prediction stuff we are doing, we are in love with AI. That is machine learning, especially the models we are building now. That is the future. There's no two ways about it. But the question becomes is, how are you going to use it, right? And just to make sure using it ethically across the board and not using for nefarious issues, I think we'll be okay. But this is here to stay, and it's going to grow. It's going to grow exponentially, in my opinion. Especially the COVID, as you mentioned, David, about the COVID components. Think about it. We came out with the vaccine. I know there was a work before done also. We came out with a vaccine within an year. You know why we came out with this? We came out because they were able to build these large systems, number crunch the algorithms for these drugs, and come out, build models, and figure out how exactly you can help the human body, right? There's no way you could have done this even 10 years back, even 5 years back. That's why we have a vaccine in 1 year, because this, you can do a bunch of stuff very, very quickly now and produce data and produce, I would say, answers based on the data very much quicker.
Well, and just to tack on there, I think there's a balance between how fast we adopt AI, where we put it, how, especially in the federal government, how you maintain the trust of the public, and are we actually delivering results? Because that's the one thing we don't want to get into is going down a path where we can't demonstrate to the American public that we are doing everything we should be doing, that it is safe, that it is not causing some sort of undue bias or unknown adverse act, but also that it's responsible use of funds that's making government better, more efficient, and more useful to everyone. So we really have to strike a good balance between, wow, this is really cool, because oddly enough, that's my meeting tomorrow morning with Treasury, is how much more money can I dump here because this is really, really cool, and should I really do that because I like it, but how is it going to be received by the folks that have to interact with it?
So great. With that, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much, Patrick, Sunil, and Oki for taking the time to talk about what you think about AI and what we can expect from it now and in the future. I'd like to turn it back to Gigi to see if she has any final words before we conclude.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you for your thought leadership on our board of directors to bring this incredible panel to us today. Patrick, we are so grateful for your generosity of time. Sunil, thank you so much. We're so excited to hear about what you're doing. And Oki, I've had the opportunity to work with you over the last couple of years, and today's presentation, as usual, did not disappoint. A lot for everybody to think about, a lot of implications for training the next generation of talent, a topic that's first and foremost. I think if you were to wake any of our CEOs in the middle of the night and you asked them, what's keeping you up at night? It used to be that they're going to be hacked. Well, they're over that. Now they're worried about talent, right? Where are they going to find the best talent? And I really appreciate that you gave, some serious remarks around that topic, because that is going to be where we're headed. Not to mention all the other issues, the competition issue with other nations, China and others, very important, and certainly is important to all of our board members, our members and guests. So thank you all. And I know if we were all together, we would be doing a huge, standing ovation for you participating today with us. And we hope we can call on you again in the future to continue to hear what the next steps are, because this is the beginning as we move forward with artificial intelligence and what it's going to mean. So, and with that, I wanted to say thank you again. And I am going to say thank you on behalf of our chairman of the board, Lowell Yoder, and all of our board members. I want to say thank you. And I do want everybody to know that we did record this session, and we are going to put it up in a couple of days on our YouTube. So with that, thank you, David. Thank you, Patrick, Sunil, Oki. Thanks again. Thank you, members of the board of directors. Our guests for participating. It was a great conversation. Thank you, and we will see you next month. Another great speaker coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.